everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, first of all. In fact, I must start by first congratulating Zinnov on this small piece which hangs on my head, on my neck. No plastic, only paper, and can convert into a seed, into a plant. I guess that's the way we should all congratulate Zinnov for the sustainability impact. So thank you. I'm here to talk about Darwinism and how does that impact the businesses and where is this entire metaphor or analogy comes from. Charles Darwin, we all know from our 10th grade science chapter, survival of the fittest. It's not the strongest. It is not the strongest of the species that will survive. It is also not the most intelligent that would survive. I guess that's the one which will survive, will be the one which adapts to the change most. And you all together are part of that change which is happening globally. The GCOEs are taking that change forward, making the organizations adapt. And I guess that's what is going to make the global organization sustain. Before we go further into this metaphor, I guess it's important for us to just prepare these two together, that how does this comes into play. And when I was just talking to my team which was organizing this, I said, okay, what is the word common between us and Darwin? I guess the word is organism versus organization. We talk about the Darwin's theory. It takes almost a millennia or centuries of evolution before a species comes into play. No species comes into play, just as you read earlier, by sheer strength. They come by sheer adaptation. And they adapt to the external threats. They adapt well to the external threats. They grow their DNA, their culture, as you go along with adapting to those changes and those threats. That's how the organisms evolve. Same is true for organizations. Organizations evolve over a period of time. Now, the difference here is, while organisms and species takes centuries, organization evolved in few years, or probably at best a decade. Even that, in today's world, even decade is too big. So it's years and sometimes even in months, the organization evolve because they respond to the threat, they respond to the opportunities, they respond to the external ecosystem in a manner which changes their culture, their DNA, the way they work. And that culture, that DNA is what is relevant in the market and in the field. If I have to just probably take 30 seconds more on this analogy, dinosaurs didn't survive, they were the strongest. It was a meteor, ice age, they didn't go through that. But reptiles survived, smallest of lizard, they survived because they could adapt to that. Same is for us. I guess if you look back 3 years, 2 years, maybe pandemic was one of such events which would have probably made many organizations evolve in last 2 to 3 years. It's an external threat. They imbibed that, they responded to that, they changed their culture, their DNA, their ways of working. How do they adapt? How do they respond? Going forward, we will see probably far many more such threats. And not each threat would be a biological threat, and I'm blessed there is no further pandemic here. But the threats could be those of recession, threats could be those of inflation, threats could be those of competitive. So these are the threats which we all will go through. Now look at the time. I mean, the organizations get impacted by the consumer behavior and what they are forced in the process to reinvent themselves. Look at these three groups. Now, many of you would probably be able to easily make out what's the difference between these three groups. Group A, these companies were there in 1955. They're not here today. Group B, they were there in 1955. They are here today. And we just taken a number, 1955, somewhere around 70 plus years, all that. Group C, these organizations were not there in 1955, but they are here today. So A, B, and C are three distinct different companies who have responded to the market changes, to the culture of adoption, of responding to that, and they have changed themselves. They have moved from one stage to another stage with time, and hence they are there. 90% of the companies which were there in 1955, Fortune 500 companies are not here today. They are not there. They did not make it. And we are talking 70 years. Going forward, it could be just 5 years. What you see today, Maybe you don't even know those companies. They are evolving. These unicorns are evolving. They are evolving in the garages. They're evolving at home. And 5 years down the line, they might be one of the Fortune 500 companies because those unicorns, those organizations, those companies who are investing in the future, they are understanding what's changing, what's impacting them, are going to be relevant, are going to be surviving there. Time is one part, and then, of course, times have shortened, as I said. The second part is, how do you respond to this external threat? All the global COEs, or GCOEs, as we call all of you all represent not only India, but largely also a transformation or a digital revolution that is happening, or reinvention that's happening. And I call that as external threat in the analogy of Darwin. The organizations who are responding to their consumers, responding to their partners, to their ecosystem, by digitally reinventing themselves, are going to stay ahead. And enterprises are reinventing themselves. There are no more companies who call themselves that I am an automobile company. There are no more banks which say that I am a retail bank. We will share a few examples in the next few slides. Every company is evolving into a technology company. Technology is becoming the only factor which will keep them competitive and going ahead and expanding, and technology is the part of a strategy. Each of our GCOE leadership teams now have a seat in the board. We just heard what our colleagues said. It's the relevance of GCOEs which making them get that seat in the boardrooms or in the decision-making tables, because their organizations are all using technologies as a driver, and they want to become a technology company. Platforms is the next big thing, or it's already a big thing. Every company wants to set up a platform. And platform for what? Platform not for doing the BAU business, platform for going beyond what they do. Mobility is a platform which automobile companies are looking at, and it's not about just creating cars, it's about creating connected cars. Every company is also now becoming an experience company. The experience of how do you manage or how do you respond to your consumers, to your employees. There are companies which kind of hugely pride themselves in that how do they manage their employees' relationships, whether through a digital platform or any other platform that they might have. But that's the experience they give to their employees. Similarly, experience you give to consumers, experience you give to your ecosystem. That's what defining the organizations. And while you have to define yourself, reinvent yourself, use technology forward, I guess there is one internal part, which is the DNA, which now needs to be there, which you all represent, is the ability or a culture to continuously change. And continuously change not only from the technology side, but a culture of continuously modernizing yourself. And that's what we call as the most important thing, because that's the thing which will make these organizations, your parent organizations, you all, relevant in the future. So if you don't have an organization which is focusing towards technology as a partnership or as a way forward, using platforms, creating platforms, making your experience organization as an experience organization, and then adopting cognitive technologies on how you work, how do you execute your business internally as well as externally. I don't think so we would be seeing many of you here in 5 years from now. So if you are all doing that, congratulations, we will see you 5 years down the line. How is the global COEs are orchestrating all this? And then I spoke about a few of this. Automotive companies are no more, as I said, calling themselves as a car manufacturers. They're creating mobility solutions. The experience inside the car is very important. How the driver is interacting with the ecosystem while sitting inside a car, or the passengers are interacting with the ecosystem, is all about the mobility now, and that's the entire focus. Banking is no more a simple payment transaction. Means India is leading, and you all are representing that. India is leading the digital banking. But digital banking today is not about simply doing transactions. It's about creating a marketplace where you can use banks' core banking platform, but more importantly, the digital platform to interact with the other players, bring a marketplace, digital banking with retail, digital banking with professional services. All this is an important platform or a change that we are seeing, which our global COEs are driving out of India. Retail is no more a e-commerce or an omni-channel. I mean, those are behind us, all retailers here in the room would understand that. Retail is all about now lifestyle platforms. Are you able to create a lifestyle platform? And is that lifestyle platform going to engage the consumers, give them an experience which goes beyond a simple e-commerce transaction or a brick and mortar transaction? That's the end result. That is then one of the things that will happen in the platform. Important is, are you connected with the lifestyle of an individual, and can you live with that lifestyle? So that's what is changing, and that's what our global COEs, you all represent, driving it. Oil and gas companies are no more, let's say, oil companies. They are about energy solutions. And we have seen that. We have seen how the organizations are evolving and creating these renewable energy platforms, or I would say overall energy platform, because renewable is just part of it, is going to grow bigger as we go along. But it's becoming all about how do you give the platform and you go and expand your ecosystem about simple fueling or oil and gas exploration. And how are we doing it? I guess this entire shift which is happening here, it is being driven by one fundamental, that the boundaries are dissolving. Now, let's not link the boundaries only with the geographical boundaries. Yes, we represent in India outpost of many of our large organizations who are driving these innovations and then go forward changes. But that's not the geographical boundaries we are talking here. We are talking here industry and organizational boundaries. No company is today represents one industry. No organization represents one industry. You represent a combination of industries which have to come together on a platform to give that experience to your consumers. We are talking about technology openness. IBM as an organization now very firmly stands for open technologies. And I'm sure all of you understand the benefits of the open technologies. You cannot drive using one technology or a closed technologies innovations. You have to go and open up your boundaries. And as the GCOEs, while you adopt these technologies, you have to make sure that the platforms that you are creating are also open. They are not restricting to your organizations. You have to open up these boundaries of the platforms to other platforms to collaborate and kind of consume each other information and services. And of course, employees and ecosystem are the two most important things, other most important things which have to cross the boundaries of either geography or technology. It means if you don't keep your see employees as one skill, then I guess we have a problem here. You have to understand what all skills the employee brings in beyond that technical skills or that functional skill or managerial skills, and how can you leverage them beyond their basic core technical skill is something what will be important going forward. How is IBM in this entire place reinventing? We are working with many of you, and we have a very strong point of view in terms of how IBM will engage or would like to engage with the GCOEs. We definitely want to be part of a journey where you are creating these platforms. And these platforms, let's say I've taken an example of software on wheels and spoke about automobile company. We are talking about one of the largest, I would say, the best automobile company using the connected, autonomous, shared, and electric platform. That's the platform where cross-industry things would come through. We are working with country's largest automobile manufacturer to create a connected car. All these are kind of platforms we are creating, whether they are global companies or local India companies. Banking, the biggest and the largest and the most significant example today in the country is State Bank of India. I got associated with State Bank of India precisely 5 years back when they started this journey of what many of us know is about YONO, you only need one. It was a tremendous platform. And today, if you look at, it is the most used mobile banking app in the country. Let's not go by mobile banking is only restricted to cities. Mobile banking is the most important banking now in our rural belt. And when I look back, the data when I get from this YONO application, at a back end, more than 60% of the users are in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And India is leading that digital innovation. Shared services. There are organizations who are working with large consumer goods or retail companies who have deployed hugely advanced automated processes, thousands of bots in their processes, trying to get their workflows more intelligent. And then all those bots have to be managed through a platform, through control command centers, We all are working on that with them. And last but not the least, there are companies who have been in retail, who have been in, let's say, fueling, all coming together. It has happened in the West, it's happening in the country. Most of the companies now are rediscovering themselves as a company which is a digital twin of fueling to a digital twin of retail and all that. These are the changes which are happening. And then as I close and I just talk about the future and what we think we should be doing, and I spoke of most of it, let's take back a minute and understand what is the threat for us today. Going back to that metaphor of Darwin, what is the threat for us today? Threat number one, the inflation is huge. And you have seen that. Your parent organizations are going through a significant amount of inflation. It is likely to be a recession in the West. And when these two things come together, the first biggest challenge is cost management, cost. And that's what you will all see in next couple of quarters, if not year. Definitely by end of the year, you all would have felt the impact or are already feeling the impact of the cost given the recession and the inflation which is coming our way. May not be there in India as profound as we see in Europe or Americas. Of course, the Russia war has created a different problem of supply chain, and that would continue to some extent. It might move from semiconductor supply chain now to food supply chain as well. And then CPG companies are going to have a significant impact of the food supply chain. These are the threats that you're going to see, and that's what you all need to respond to. The second threat to me is this all about talent. And it's not something new. We all know about it. But now the talent threat is very different. Talent are driving their own positions. We are no more able to tell the talent how to work. They tell us how do they want to work. Whether they want to work from home, they want to work from office, they want to work hybrid, they want to work in the evening, they don't want to work in the morning. They are driving that change. How fast we as a global COEs are able to respond to their working style and still get our focus on our growth and our technology platforms, I guess that's going to be the second biggest challenge. And then how do you overcome that? And third, of course, as I said, a culture. The organizations needs to have a culture of continuously transforming and morphing themselves to respond to these threats. Our advice, our recommendation, our 2 cents, the way I would say it as accelerate with ecosystem. You cannot do and you cannot respond to these threats alone. You have to accelerate with ecosystem. What ecosystem defines you is what you need to decide. Is your ecosystem is part of your competition? Maybe yes, sometimes. Is ecosystem part of a different industry? Maybe yes. Is ecosystem only technology service providers? Maybe yes. Is ecosystem the system integrators which are already there who you want to collaborate with? Yes. Is ecosystem the technology companies? Yes. You define your ecosystem, but you cannot do it alone. I guess that's the mantra. You have to accelerate with ecosystem. Number 2, the borderless evolution. It's change the definition of the border. Don't call border as a physical border. Technology border, employee border. We spoke about geographical border, of course. Currency border. That's another new phrase which is likely to come in terms of the borderless things. Digital currencies are going to define or redefine the currency borders here. The third most important thing is the culture. How do you take your organization forward? As I said, I have been re-emphasizing on this culture because the way we are working will not be the way we will work 2 or 3 or 5 years down the line. We all have to adapt what we very seriously and have been continuously talking in the market about garages. You have to take the garage approach. You have to take that approach of creating and building, continuously building these innovations and these solutions. And then you have to move, shift left. What is shift left? It's a simple thing. Right of an organization, the way the organizations have been working in the past is, can you provide me 1,000 people? Can you provide me 500 people? Can you provide me this talent? Can you fulfill this gap of our technologies? And that's how the global CEOs have been responding to. Slowly and steadily, they are moving to the left. And somewhere in the middle is they are providing solutions, products. They are being part of a new product launches. They are being part of a new solution developments. And the extreme left is the value creation. All of us, as a part of a global ecosystem of COEs, global COEs, have to start looking far left now, which is how much value are we bringing back to our corporations? And the question should be, how can I improve the efficiency of the organization by 5%? How can I increase the customer base of my organization by 20%? How can I impact my revenue by 2 digits or double-digit growth? These are the questions probably we will all need to start answering and be part of, and that part of that seat on the table, these are the things that we need to put forward and go ahead. So with that, I just thank you all for hearing me, and best of luck to you all. Look forward to the next one.